It's unclean. Run! Run from churches where the worship leaves you cold. There is no sense of God because they don't know God. Run! Run from churches where you're comfortable in your sins.
We are entering the climax stage of mankind's existence. A showdown is coming between God and mankind.
And when the people of God are on the march for God, the enemy will not be far away.
You're the temple. You're it. So when they say that they're going to build a third temple, say, hey, it's already here, brother. It's already here. It's mobile. It's on the move. I mean, it's got legs. It's walking around. This temple's going all over the place. It's not stuck in Jerusalem. It's going to Jakarta. It's going to Hong Kong. It's going to Davos, Switzerland. It's going to Shanghai. It's going to Mexico City. This temple's on the move. We're the temple. We're it. We're the temple.
You never know there's a devil until you're seen.
This is TruNews. I'm Rick Wiles. The International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor said on Friday she would launch a full investigation into alleged war crimes in the Palestinian territories as soon as the court's jurisdiction had been established. The announcement opens the possibility of charges being filed against Israelis. Fatou bin Saada, the International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor, said a preliminary examination into alleged war crimes in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem had provided enough information to meet all criteria for opening an investigation. She said that she had filed a request with judges for a jurisdictional ruling because of the contested legal status of the Palestinian territories. The ICC has the authority to hear cases of war crimes, genocide, and crimes against humanity committed on the territory of the 123 countries that have signed up to it. Israel has not joined the International Court, but the Palestinian Authority has done so. Israel has illegally occupied the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem since 1967 in violation of numerous United Nations resolutions. Furthermore, the Geneva Conventions prohibit establishing settlements on land captured in war and occupied by military forces. We have video of the ICC prosecutor, Fatou bin Saada, announcing the court's decision to launch a war crimes investigation of Israel's mistreatment of Palestinians.
This is the responsible step to take in the circumstances of this situation. Today, I announce that following a thorough, independent, and objective assessment of all reliable information available to my office, the preliminary examination into the situation in Palestine has concluded with the determination that all the statutory criteria under the Rome Statute for the opening of an investigation have been met, and as swiftly as possible in the interest of victims and affected communities. In brief, I am satisfied, 1, that war crimes have been or are being committed in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip. 2, that potential cases arising from the situation would be admissible. And 3, that there are no substantial reasons to believe that an investigation would not serve the interest of justice of the International Criminal Court under Article 12(2)(a) of the Rome Statute. As there has been a referral from the State of Palestine, there is no requirement to seek pretrial chambers authorization before proceeding to open an investigation.
Well, Palestinian leaders welcomed the ICC announcement today. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, however, said the ICC had no legal jurisdiction to investigate the Palestinian territories. We have video of Mr. Netanyahu denouncing the ICC decision.
This is a dark day for truth and justice. The ICC prosecutor has apparently decided not to dismiss outright the Palestinian claim against the State of Israel. This is a baseless and outrageous decision. The court has no jurisdiction in this case. The ICC only has jurisdiction over petitions submitted by sovereign states, but there has never been a Palestinian state. The ICC prosecutor's decision has turned the International Criminal Court into a political tool to delegitimize the State of Israel. The prosecutor has completely ignored the legal arguments we presented to her. She has also completely ignored history and truth when she says that the very act of Jews living in their ancestral homeland, the land of the Bible, that this is a war crime. We will not be silent. We will not bow our heads before this outrage. We'll continue to speak out against this travesty of justice.
The International Criminal Court's investigation into possible war crimes committed by the State of Israel was prompted by the growing outrage around the world over IDF snipers shooting Palestinian boys in their heads and chest during weekly protests along a security fence. Here is a montage of videos showing innocent teenage Palestinian boys murdered by IDF snipers.
וואי, זה סרטון! יש! בן של זונה. איזה סרטון, הנה, תרוצו לפנות אותו. בטח שצילמתי את זה. וואו, פגעו למישהו בראש. Braço!
How big is this announcement by the ICC to investigate Israel for war crimes? Will there finally be justice for the Palestinians murdered by Israeli snipers? Could both Benjamin Netanyahu and General Benny Gantz be sentenced to prison in The Hague? Will evangelical Zionists continue to stand for Israel if the country is convicted of war crimes against humanity? Edward Zoll and Doc Burkhart are here to join us. First, however, I need to remind you that 2019 is coming to a close in only 11 days, and TruNews would appreciate you donating an end-of-the-year gift to propel us into 2020 with extra resources to fight the good fight of faith. The fastest and easiest way to donate is online at TruNews.com or at PayPal using support@TruNews.com. Checks, money orders, and precious metals may be mailed to Post Office Box 690069, Vero Beach, Florida 32969. You may call 800-576-2116 any hour of the day, and cryptocurrencies may also be donated. Go to TruNews.com and open the drop-down box at the Donate button in the upper right corner of our website. Let's bring Doc and Edward into today's discussion of world news. Gentlemen, glad to have you here. This is a huge announcement today. The International Criminal Court has now announced it is officially investigating Israel for war crimes, crimes against humanity, in particular the IDF snipers shooting Palestinian boys in the head, in the chest, in the legs, as we've just witnessed. That was just a few videos. These sniper assassinations take place almost every Friday. You can just be certain that on a Friday, because the Palestinians protest at the border, at that security fence on Fridays. Mm-hmm. And the IDF snipers are there, and they pick off one or two Palestinians to just display
make an example
of them, show the Palestinians that the Israelis are in control. And you didn't see in any of those videos any Palestinian boy physically threatening harm to an Israeli soldier.
They were all unarmed.
Right.
Yes. Those Palestinians don't have guns, hardly even holding rocks at that. The people shooting them are hundreds, 200 meters away from them.
Yes.
They don't pose a threat to them.
Well, maybe they were gathering in a threatening way, Rick.
It was called Assembly to protest military occupation. They have the right to do it. Their land has been taken over. It was seized by terrorists.
So let me get this straight. The Palestinians weren't shooting at the IDF or anything, right?
No.
They weren't throwing any rocks or anything that we saw, at least in those videos. They were setting fires. I saw that.
Right.
Maybe that's worth getting shot over.
Yes. No. The IDF thinks it has the right to shoot Palestinians.
Treat them like dogs.
And literally that's how they see the Palestinians. Ben Gurion, the prime minister, said, "We viewed the Palestinians as donkeys."
Right.
He was talking about when the Ashkenazi invaded Palestine in the 30s and 40s, and he said, we viewed the Palestinians as donkeys. They could treat them as livestock. Well, they still treat them as livestock. And it's the most shameful thing taking place in America. And every moral, upright Jew, not only in America, but in the world, regardless of your political affiliation, every moral, upright Jew should be ashamed of what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians, and they should be denouncing it and calling for justice.
Now, there are some that are doing that, Rick.
Yes.
There are some.
Yes.
They're saying we are treating the Palestinians in an abusive way, in a colonialist way. There are quite a few Jews who are speaking up for the Palestinians.
And they're treated by the Zionist Jews as traitors.
Right.
Self-hating Jews.
Yes, they call them self-hating Jews. So we're lending our support to the Palestinian people. I know it's not popular here in the USA, but it's very popular in heaven. And I'm doing the right thing. I'm on record saying it is wrong for a country to militarily occupy another person's country and to use
lethal
force against teenagers to prove that you're in control. This Mrs. Bensouda, Fatou Bensouda, the chief prosecutor of the criminal court. Look, even though Israel is not a signer, it's not a signatory of the criminal court, neither is the United States.
Right.
The fact that they're committing these crimes in Palestine, and Palestine does not legally belong to the state of Israel by any stretch of the imagination from a legal viewpoint. Israel, the current state of Israel, conquered the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem in a war in 1967. They've been building settlements at an aggressive rate, and that is a war crime according to the Geneva Conventions. Yeah. And so all these evangelical Zionists in America that are going over to the West Bank and helping to build settlements on Palestinian lands, they're actually participating in a war crime. Could we see some evangelical Zionists also charged with war crimes?
Wow, I hadn't thought about that.
Well, I have. I wouldn't lose an hour's sleep, Doc. They're participating in war crimes.
I hadn't even considered.
They're on Occupy, and they're raising money. They're raising money in the United States to perpetuate the war crimes.
It's akin to helping a government lay down landmines.
You have evangelical Zionist churches over here sending, quote, missionaries, to be IDF soldiers.
Yes.
Could Mike Evans be brought into this as an accomplice to war crimes?
A collaborator?
Yes. How far will this go? Look, I am praying for the Palestinian people to get justice. And some of you may be wondering, why is Rick and TruNews, why have they been on this topic all year? Because it's right. That's why.
Yeah.
Because nobody else in America is speaking up. That's why.
Because we saw with our own eyes what's going on over there.
That's what changed us. When the three of us went to Palestine, when we went to Bethlehem.
During Ramadan.
Yes, and we saw with our own eyes the way the Palestinians, both Christians and Muslims, are mistreated by the Israelis. We came back changed people, and we've never stopped talking about it. And if you would take a real tour of Israel and Palestine, instead of the fake tours where they want you just to see a certain thing, but if you would go into Palestine and talk to the Palestinians and find out just how they're mistreated, you'll come back a different person, and you will be fighting for justice for the Palestinian people. Benjamin Netanyahu's got a serious problem. He's indicted in his own country for bribery and could go to prison. So he's got a choice. He could stay in Israel and go to prison for bribery, or he could flee Israel and be arrested for war crimes outside of Israel and end up in The Hague.
It's a decision, I think, the Netanyahu's, not just Benjamin Netanyahu, but his family is going to have to look at, especially if he isn't running for re-election again next year in March. Rick, the core of this is he's between the dome of the rock and a hard place. He really could go to jail over this.
Yes, and the prison would be The Hague. And Benny Gantz could be brought into this. You could have both of the primary political leaders in Israel right now, both indicted for war crimes.
Because Benny Gantz was involved in actions in the Gaza Strip in 2014.
That's right.
That's on his record. That's his job as an Israeli general. Do you know he's also in the Golan Heights?
Yes.
So I realized this when Benjamin Netanyahu visited the Golan Heights, the hospital for foreign fighters, essentially ISIS fighters, was conducted with Operation Good Neighbor. Benny Gantz was at that event actually running that hospital for the Israeli army.
Personally, I believe Almighty God is bringing about justice. I believe the Lord is bringing these haughty, arrogant Zionists to their knees. And
are you suggesting that Benjamin Netanyahu isn't chosen by God to lead?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Doc. The God that I serve does not tell his followers to assassinate innocent people. Mm. So I believe God is responding to the prayers. Many of the TruNews audience for the past year or two, you've been praying with us because we've been waking you up and you're realizing what is really going on, and you're realizing that we've been sold propaganda in the American churches, and we were told that the founding of Israel was this glorious act of God in 1948, and Moses came down himself and planted the Star of David flag in Jerusalem, and the whole thing was just an act of God. Well, the truth is, it wasn't an act of God. It was an act of terrorism. And they're still terrorists today.
It's an act of rebellion against God.
And it's rebellion against God. Just a week or two ago, the ICC prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, remember she made another warning to Benjamin Netanyahu about the Jordan Valley.
Right. That's right.
She said, you might want to think twice about annexing the Jordan Valley. That too could be a war crime.
In fact, it was enough of a serious of an accusation from the prosecutor of the ICC that the Attorney General actually gave a warning to Benjamin Netanyahu and said, we might want to back off on this Jordan Valley stuff for a while, or at least step back on it a little bit. So it was enough of a threat out there in order for them to have a second thought about it at least.
That's right.
It was brought up during the Democratic debate last night. The subject again of, is it right? Should this be U.S. foreign policy to support the annexation of not just the Jordan Valley, but the Golan Heights, for example, the expansion of Israeli settlements? This was a topic of the Democratic debate last night. That's how far this discussion has gone.
And generally, what was the response of the Democratic candidates last night?
The two candidates who spoke about it was Ohio Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders, his position is that aid to Israel should be predicated on how they treat the Palestinian people. Pete Buttigieg actually had an interesting response. He said that policy decision by the U.S., not just by Israel, but by the U.S., is an example of how the Trump administration has actually interfered in domestic affairs of the Israelis. That's something that Pete Buttigieg laid out yesterday.
This is the campaign's going in a direction I didn't expect for 2020. You've got the Democrats defending the Palestinians,
right,
and the Republicans defending the Zionist Ashkenazi.
So as a dyed-in-the-wool Republican, anything that the Democrats say, you have to disagree with, right?
Right.
You can't agree with anything they say. So therefore, if a Democrat says it, therefore, it's got to be wrong, and I'm fighting it. So if...
That's why I'm an independent.
Yeah. We're far right, left wingers.
That's right. Far left, right wingers.
There we go.
So, no, we're independent, and we think for ourselves.
Right.
And so I applaud the Democrats for speaking up in defense of the Palestinians, including Bernie Sanders, who is a socialist Jew. I commend him that he is making these statements. I applaud him. It's the Republicans that are marching
to Zion.
To Zion, all right. And we're not talking about New Zion.
Right.
We're talking about the Zionist state. You're going to see and hear some very shocking things on this newscast about the origin of Israel, the political state of Israel. And God willing, I'm going to produce a movie in 2020, a documentary film, because we have to show people. The best thing to do is show people how this state came together. Because Edward, in my lifetime, when I was a young Christian, we didn't hear a lot about Zionism. I was saved in 1978. And in the 80s, you really didn't hear a lot about Zionism in the churches. It started in the 90s. You started hearing it. It really ramped up 2000 with George W. Bush, with the Iraq War. That's when it went on a rocket ride. But what we heard, particularly after the 1967 war, was that how the 1967 war was God himself intervened.
Right.
It was almost like God himself walked on the ground in Israel and fought the Arabs and killed the Arabs. That's the way it was told to us.
Right. We heard that from the pulpit.
Yes. It was a glorious, glorious description of what happened in 1967. There was no such thing. It was a bloody massacre of Arabs, Christian,
men, women, and children.
Christian and Muslims, men, women, and children. It was nothing. God wasn't in it at all. not my God. So we want to show you, just to give you an idea of what it's like to be under Jewish rule. Because you better think about it here in America. You better think about it. Because
it could happen here.
Because what they want to do is take the Zionist occupation global. Yeah. I said that one night in Bethlehem. We had dinner with some Palestinian officials, including the former ambassador to the United States, the one that President Trump kicked out.
And there were a few American pastors there too. And so,
yeah, and so it was a wonderful evening.
Yes.
And
Mr. Zomblot.
And I said, sitting at the table I was at, I said the Zionists want to globalize the occupation. And I saw the look on the Palestinians' faces. They didn't get what I was saying. And I said, no, seriously, this is what I'm realizing. You're the test case. They want to globalize this. They want to use technology. They want to use surveillance technology and artificial intelligence. They want to use all of this new technology to globalize the occupation and dominate the world.
Right.
And the first steps of that are the things we saw this year, the equivocation in law in some countries of anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism.
Yes. Well, how many police departments in America?
Just getting ready to go there.
How many police departments in America send their officers to Israel for Israeli training?
And the reverse is also true. They actually send Israeli officers here to the U.S. to embed with U.S. police forces to train them as well. So it works both ways.
And the U.S. Army.
And they're merging the law enforcement departments.
And they're teaching Israeli tactics to U.S. police forces.
Why do you think American police departments are being militarized? Who do you think's doing this? Who do you think's introducing these militaristic tactics and mentalities in local law enforcement?
Right. So as you watch how the Palestinians are treated by IDF and by Israeli forces, you have to ask yourself a question. At what point in the future, who are the Palestinians here in the United States? Who are going to be the ones that are going to be on the receiving end of being delegitimized and being brutalized and told they have no country? There's coming a time where that's going to happen.
The Christians who cling to biblical truths in the New Testament, that's who.
Right.
That's who. And we're going to show you a video. This is from the city of Hebron, which is nearby Bethlehem. It's occupied. It's probably the most militarized Palestinian city. And those people live under horrible conditions. What you're going to see is a video of IDF soldiers bursting into a home while the children are sleeping. It's late at night. I don't know what hour it is. It's 3 a.m. So picture this. Just imagine you're asleep and Israeli soldiers burst through your door at 3 a.m. and order you to wake up your children so that they can question your children. That's what these Zionist thugs did to this Palestinian mother. Watch this video. This is number 4.
ماشي اوكي
قديمة سمو مسافات على قنين كلام قديمة أوه قوية سمو كوكاني لدلت
كشو
كل ولاد البيت لهون
كله نايم كله نايم
كله لهون
كلهم صغار وين نجيبهم هون سقعد
كل ولاد لهون
كله كتان
في غرفة واحدة كلهم في غرفة واحدة تعال شوفهم كلهم الأولاد نايمين في غرفة واحدة خليهم في غرفة
كل ولاد لهون
طب ما هي نايمين حرام يعني نفيهم صغار
شو قديمة
ما تستكيل عليه
كل ولاد لهون
كله نايم صغير.
ولد لهون.
بقيت ولد صغير لما يشوف الدنيا ليل ويشوفكم جايين على هون راح يموت خوف وسرعه. لو هي ما في الغرفه
ولد لهون.
بو تستكل عليه.
كل ولد لهون.
هون حرام يعني نفيقهم. تعال تفرج هيوما يعني الاولاد هون نايمين في الغرفه.
اسكت. خلاص.
يعني حرام بيت صغير نفيقهم.
استكل. كله يا رديم كتان كله.
حمام.
شو اسمك؟ نايف نعمان دانا. نايف نعمان دانا.
شو اسمك؟
دلال.
دلال؟
بيمش خفيش جيش خفيش.
قديش عمرك؟
هذا عمره شو اسمه 8 سنين.
ها؟
8.
قديش عمرك؟
وهذا عمره 11 سنة.
ها؟
11.
فيقو
هذا؟ عداي جيش يا بجاع هون بس حاول خافش الجيش بده يتفرج هون. حاول شوف شو بده الجيش. وهذا صغير برضه. هذا عمره 9 سنين. فيو قصاي
انت
ولد قصاي. حاول الجيش بده يشوفه. حاول. اطلع حتى روح اشرب من المية اول شيء. حاول عداي. خافوش عادي. روح اشرب مي. خافيش. شو اسمك انت؟
محمد.
لا اسمه شو اسمه؟
قصاي.
نايم البانا. قصاي نايف دانا.
قصاي
نايف دانا.
ما طلع الخطوة.
ايش؟ هذا من ايش هذا؟
السلك.
بيلعب عند الحمام.
טוב, קדימה. צלם פה את כולם. צלם פה את כולם, גם את נאיף. נאיף קודם כל. דלה. דלה. עדיי. וחוצה. נאיף, דעונה. זלמנו. הלאה. ועכשיו? شو اسمك؟ تحفظ بايمتى؟
قول له يا عداي شو اسمك؟
عدايوس.
عدايوس؟
عداي.
عداي؟ شو اسمك؟ حسان؟ قصاي. وانتين متلخبط.
وايش انا بدور يعني؟
هاي فتش الغرفة مرتين.
ليش هذا بدك تصورني يعني؟ اسمه دلال دلال
לא, לא, זה הראשון, כאילו שתי כניסות נפרדות וגם לגב כזה. אתה רוצה, יש את השני גם ככה. שלום. מה הסלם? סלמת.
That's what it looks like to live under Zionist occupation. And that's what every place will look like if Zionism is not stopped. Soldiers bursting in a home at 3 a.m., ordering a mother to wake up her children, telling the children, don't be afraid, military's here.
You're standing there in military uniforms, everyone's carrying a machine gun, but don't be scared.
We could shoot your mother, and nobody can do anything about it.
Right.
Really, the patience of those parents is the only thing that stopped that situation from
What are they going to do? Think about what do they do, Edward? Patience is their only weapon that they have.
Yes.
They have to take it.
Yes.
Because if they say anything, guess what happens?
They get shot, and nobody says anything about it because they don't have a voice.
I noticed this video was recorded in 2015. Since then, there's been many laws enacted in Israel that you can't videotape soldiers anymore. So that incident that we saw here at 3 a.m., they were looking for something, who knows, didn't find anything, just found a family afraid, cowering in their home. But how many of those instances happened that aren't recorded anymore? I mean, that video could represent hundreds of
It's now illegal to record.
Exactly.
And instead, in 2015, they were just questioning the boys. Now they would just pick up the boys and take them somewhere and question them. And be gone for days, and not a mother and father not know where their child is for days.
If I recall, there's something like 1,000 Palestinian children, boys, that are in jail, that their parents have no idea where they're at. They were taken from their home just like that for no reason, and just taken by the soldiers and placed in jail.
Remember the plan that I know the White House denied, but the peace plan that we covered earlier in the week, part of that was the freeing, quote, freeing of detained Palestinians, including boys. In that plan, they had a provision that the boys and the kids would be released a year after, up to 3 years even after, the initial implementation of the agreement. So that 1,000-man contingent, maybe more, of kids and men and women that have been taken by the Israeli forces, they are clearly being detained against their will, and their freedoms are basically gone. But it has to be played into a peace deal because of how big of a deal it is.
Oh, shameful. Now, this next video, I want to dedicate this to Perry Stone, Mike Huckabee, Mike Evans, Jensen Franklin, Michael Brown,
Paula
White, Laurie Cardozo Moore, Jan Markell, and the rest of the evangelical Zionist shills in America. Because when they go over to Israel and they get all excited about West Bank settlements, yes, and you see the videos on Christian TV, it's not Christian TV anymore because it's Zionist propaganda television in America, and they show the videos of Jewish settlements, that the Jews are returning to Judea and Samaria. And isn't this wonderful? This is the Bible being fulfilled. And look at these beautiful new Jewish homes being built in Judea and Samaria.
Look at this daycare over here and this school over here that we sponsored.
Yes, and you have to wonder how many of these evangelical Zionists in America are getting a little piece of that land. How many of them have been promised a house or a building in return for being a shill in America on religious television and radio? I don't know, but I suspect that some of them are being paid off with land in the West Bank. But this is what I want you to see. They only show you the shiny new homes that went up for the Jews in Palestine, which they call Judea and Samaria. But before those new homes went up, something had to come down. And we're going to show you a video now of what the Israelis do to the Palestinians who are living on the land that Many of them can prove in writing that their families have owned for 800, 900, 1,000 years. Watch this one. This is number 5. This is what it's like every day in the West Bank.
ماشي ماشي
They're ripping someone's roof off. Yeah. So that's a home that used to belong to a family.
They're demolishing the house. They've pushed the Palestinians out of their homes, off the land, and now the Palestinians are refugees. They have to go somewhere and be a refugee. And you usually end up that King Abdullah takes them in Jordan and has to feed them so that the Israelis can occupy that land and build apartments and condos and offices and businesses.
And evangelical Zionists can come and show off the beautiful new homes and schools and daycares and everything and say, look at the money we're raising to build this project.
Yes.
That's the most insidious part of it, Rick, is we're paying for it.
I'm not, but American evangelicals are donating gazillions of dollars for those crimes.
War crimes.
They're war crimes. And hey, listen, you get that stink on you. All right? When God deals with this injustice, that stinks all over you. So don't get it on you. Make sure your hands are clean, because God's going to bring justice and judgment. God is a God of justice, and He defends the weak. He defends those who are being oppressed. Is that the God you know, Doc?
That's the God I know. The God who defends the defenseless.
The fatherless. He condemns moving the boundary stone.
Right.
Isn't that one of the things He told the Jews not to do?
Well, that was one the curse things. If you do that, if you move boundary stones, you come under a curse when you do that.
Because land was marked by boundary stones, and moving boundary stones will bring a curse on you.
Right.
Well, the Jews do it all day long.
They bulldoze boundary stones.
Yes.
Did you notice the date when that demolition took place? It was on 9/11 of this year. Just caught that. I thought that was a interesting coincidence.
Well, this past week, Edward, the Zionists had been in mourning in Israel for a person that they consider a great stateswoman, a founding mother of the Zionist state. Her name is Gula Cohen. And so I saw these articles this week in the Israeli papers.
Yeah, started popping up.
And matter of fact, the who's who of Israel attended her funeral. We've got some video of the funeral. This is number 9. So let's watch.
So right here you see, Rick, Benny Gantz.
Yes.
Current runner, basically to take the prime ministership if he does win here in March, if he's not also indicted along with Benjamin Netanyahu, potentially by the ICC. In addition to Benny Gantz, the chief Ashkenazi rabbi, David Lau, and the Sephardic chief rabbi, Yitzhak Yosef, were both intense. There's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with his entourage, his security. They showed up. He even spoke at this funeral. He said that this is it's the death of Gula Cohen signifies the end of a generation. She's not just being put to rest at the Mount of Olives, but she's being celebrated. In addition to the Prime Minister, they had also the President of Israel, President Rivlin. Rivlin spoke at this event. There again, the rabbis, the chief Ashkenazi and chief Sephardic rabbis of Israel. They were taking her body up to the Mount of Olives to be put in honor, the same place, actually, I believe, that Robert Maxwell was put to rest.
Now, Edward, is this a Jewish Mother Teresa? Did she take care of poor children? Is she a Jewish Betsy Ross who sewed the first Star of David flag?
Only if Mother Teresa is now considered a terrorist, because that's exactly who Miss Cohen was in life.
In fact, there's a book about her which I have in my library. This is number 10. Women of Violence.
Wait a minute here.
Yes.
The passionate and moving story of Palestine's fight for independence by a member of the Stern Gang.
She was a member of the Stern Gang?
Not the Peace Corps or the Red Cross.
Woman of Violence. She bragged of her bloody past. She was proud of it. She killed people. She slaughtered Palestinians. She participated in massacres. And all of the Israeli leadership
honored
her this week. Now do you get a taste of what we're talking about? These people, like Netanyahu, they're just terrorists in suits. That's all they are, coat and tie. They're terrorists in coats and ties. She was a terrorist who thrived on killing people. Her history is shocking. Before we get into some of her past, she was a member of. All right, so in the.
A lot of our audience isn't going to know who the Stern Gang is.
Right, but before we get into this, so in the pre-Israeli state period, before 1948, she was a terrorist. She was a member of the Stern Gang. Then after the Zionist state was established, she was a member of the Knesset.
Right.
And she was a feisty, argumentative member of the Knesset. And one of the people that she used to irritate was Menachem Begin. And he's not this great statesman, this man of peace. No, he was a member of Bergen. Right. He was a killer. He was a bloody killer. And she would argue with him in the Knesset because she knew that he was just as bloody as she was, and she didn't like Menachem Begin trying to get a peace treaty with Egypt.
Right.
She thought that was wimpy.
That was going soft.
Going soft. She was like, hey, I knew you when you were young and you were a killer.
You used to be the Osama bin Laden of our country.
Yeah, and now here you are, you're getting old and you're getting soft and you want to make peace with the Egyptians. You know, her attitude, well, we got to kill them, So we got a video of her in the Knesset heckling Prime Minister Menachem Begin. So this is number 11. Let's watch this one.
מסמכים אחרים. הלא הם המסמך המצרי שהוגש לנשיא קרטר ולי בפגישתנו הראשונה בוועידת קמפ דיוויד ביום הראשון לפתיחת הדיונים, וכן את המסמך האמריקני שהוגש לנו תוך כדי הוועידה שנתקיימה בקמפ דיוויד.
תגלה לעם ישראל מה שישנו שם בתוך המסמכים.
שקט.
דרך ארץ בשביל הארץ, לא דרך ארץ בשבילך.
אדוני היושב-ראש, תקרא לסדר.
אני אבקש שקט. אני אבקש מראש הממשלה להמשיך. כן, אדוני היושב-ראש, יש לי בקשה אליו, יואיל להגן עליי בפני הגברת גאולה כהן.
אני מבקשת, אדוני היושב-ראש, להגן על ארץ ישראל מפני ראש הממשלה.
זה איננו. אני אבקש מחברת הכנסת גאולה כהן להפסיק בקריאות הביניים.
תעזוב אותי מהטלוויזיה. לא היינו צריכים שאתה תעלה לשלטון כדי להחזיר את הארץ. חיים קורפו. יש יותר טובים ממך בשביל זה. השלום חשוב. שלחת אנשים למות בשביל ארץ ישראל ולוותר על
חברי הכנסת, אני אבקש לא להיכנס לוויכוחים במקומותיכם. חבר הכנסת משה שמיר, חברת הכנסת גאולה כהן, אני מניח שתהיה לך אפשרות להתבטא. אני מבקש ממך לא להפריע לישיבת הכנסת. אני מבקש ממך לא להכריח אותי לקרוא אותך לסדר.
תקרא אותי לסדר, אתה את שלך תעשה ואני את שלי אעשה.
So that's Gula Cohen, the woman that all the Israelis are mourning this week, the passing of this great patriot of the Zionist state. She was a bloody terrorist, and she was arguing with another bloody terrorist, Menachem Begin. But who was she? What did she do? Why is she revered? Well, in the pre-1948 struggle for the Zionist state, there were a number of terrorist organizations fighting for the Ashkenazi Jews. Haganah, Ergen, and Lehi. Lehi was also known as the Stern Gang. So this woman, Gula Cohen, in 1942, she joined Lehi. Lehi broke off of Haganah because Lehi thought, the leaders of Lehi, well, actually, they broke off of Ergen. Ergen broke off of Haganah because they weren't extreme enough. They weren't extreme enough. And then Lehi broke off of Ergen because they weren't killing enough Palestinians. So in 1942, she joined Lehi. She was the Tokyo Rose.
Right.
That's where she got to talk a lot.
She had a pirate radio show. She was Tokyo Rose of the Zionist Jews.
Right, because she could speak perfect Hebrew.
Yes. Well, they didn't speak Hebrew.
Right. Well, that's what she had. Perfect Hebrew diction is the way they described it.
It was Yiddish.
Yeah.
They hadn't even invented the fake Hebrew yet, Doc.
I know.
They got fake Hebrew now. Okay. So she was arrested by the British government for terrorism. 1946, while she was broadcasting her terrorist radio show out of Tel Aviv. June 6, 1946, she was sentenced to 7 years in prison by the British. She was charged with being in possession of a wireless transmitter, her radio station, pistols, revolvers, and ammunition. But she was imprisoned in Bethlehem by the British, but she escaped in 1947. And you know how she escaped? She pretended she was a Palestinian Christian. That's how she got out of the prison. She got clothing and dressed herself as a Palestinian Christian and fooled everybody, got out of the prison, and went right back into the terrorism network.
That's the distinct irony of this, because we have a lot of Christian, evangelical Christians pretending to be Jews now.
Well, I think you could also say that today there are Zionist terrorists infiltrating churches. It's still happening, Doc. Nothing's changed. So let's get into.
Well, she met Schneerson. Ms. Cohen in the 1970s. She met the Lubavitcher himself, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, in 1970. This is with other former Lehi leaders, and she also was able to persuade, according to the Jerusalem Post, Meir Kahane, another terrorist.
Kahane,
Meir Kahane, to take disruptive action against the Soviet representatives in the U.S. with the aim of causing greater tension between the U.S. and the USSR. A basic example of this, she's causing unrest inside the United States.
Absolutely. And he was killed here in the U.S. He was a very violent man. Let's talk about Lehi. We don't have time today to talk about Ergen and Haganah. We'll just talk about Lehi, which was the Jewish terrorist group that she belonged to. She's honored this week in Israel. If you had been in the state of Israel this week, you would have seen all the tributes to this old terrorist who killed many people. And I have to wonder how many evangelical Zionists went to Israel this week to mourn with their Israeli
counterparts.
I really, was Mike Evans at the funeral? Let's ask him, Mike Evans, did you go to the funeral honoring this old terrorist? How many evangelical Zionists attended an event in Israel this week in honor of this woman. So Lehi was started by Abraham Stern. This is when Palestine was under the control of the British. It was mandatory Palestine. And his goal was to evict the British from all of Palestine, to do it by military force. He wanted unrestricted immigration of European Jews into Palestine. That was the plan.
Right.
No borders. Bring as many Ashkenazi from Europe as they could get in and take over the land. Now, what they did is that they overran the Arabs. They just imagine that. Imagine open borders and people illegal immigrants just pouring in for decades. Imagine that.
And that was a part of this deal. Part of this deal was actually a potential alliance with the Nazis and the Italians to fight against the British in World War II.
It is unbelievable when you get into the history. And folks, you can do this study yourself. Doc, Edward, Stern was demanding folks, listen to this, and I'm getting this from left-wing Wikipedia. He was demanding the formation of a Jewish state, a new totalitarian Hebrew republic. It was initially called the National Military Organization in Israel. That was his group, Stern. They referred to their members as terrorists. They called themselves terrorists.
I thought this is the budding democracy in the Middle East.
No.
Isn't that what we're told every single time our leaders?
They were terrorists then. They're still terrorists today. They shoot Palestinian boys. They're still terrorists. Nothing's changed. They're still terrorists. They're just wearing nice suits, driving nice cars, but they're still terrorists.
In uniforms. So
there was Netanyahu and Benny Gantz and all of them honoring the funeral of one of their great terrorists.
Freedom fighters, they call them.
One of their superstar.
They don't call them freedom fighters.
No, they just call them.
So that was one of their freedom fighters.
Edward, they're proud to be terrorists. This is what you got to understand. They are proud to be terrorists. That's why I say there's no ISIS. There's only Ergun and Lehi dressed up as Arabs, blaming the Arabs. This is what they did in Egypt in the 1950s.
The Levant affair.
Levant, yes.
They armed, gave bombs basically to Israeli operatives in Egypt, and they planted bombs in schools, libraries, and in stop signs, places where there'd be children, families. And they pretended to be Nazis. That was the whole game. The only reason it failed was that one of the bombs prematurely went off and they got caught. But that happened, the Levant affair in Egypt.
Yes. Hey, to our Arab viewers around the world in the Middle East, we're learning fast. We're catching on, okay? They've known this stuff for years, for decades. We're catching on fast. We're learning as fast as we can. Our eyes are open. We're figuring it out. What they've done to you, they want to do it to us. Wikipedia says Lehi split from Ergun military group to continue the fight against the British during World War II. Now listen, as Edward just said, Lehi sought an alliance with fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, offering to fight alongside them against the British in return for the transfer of Jews from Europe to Palestine. What did we just read?
They were friends of Hitler.
No,
they tried to ally with Hitler.
The Zionist Jews. Do you get this, folks? Do you understand this? The Zionist Jews were fighting alongside Hitler and Mussolini with an understanding that the Jews would leave Europe and Italy and be given Palestine. Who controlled Palestine? Great Britain. Who was fighting Germany and Italy? Great Britain. The Zionist Jews fought for Nazi Germany. You hear this Holocaust stuff. Do you understand what these people really did? They don't want anybody to know that they were fighting with the Nazis.
They don't want anyone to look up the transfer agreement. They don't want anyone to think about the bombing of the King David Hotel.
They destroyed Mayor Ken Livingstone's political career in Great Britain, the mayor of London. They destroyed his career because he said one day what I just read.
It's a historical fact.
And they destroyed his career. They smeared him, chased him out of the Labor Party, and all he did was quote historical facts.
Right.
Wikipedia, I'm reading Wikipedia. During World War II, Lehi declared that it would establish a Jewish state based on nationalistic and totalitarian principles.
Nationalistic?
And totalitarian principles.
That sounds like
the
Nazis.
Would soldiers, machine gun soldiers bursting into your house at 3 a.m. and harassing your little children in bed, would that be a totalitarian Jewish state?
That's the very definition of it.
That would be it.
Okay, that's what the world's going to look like if the Zionists are not stopped. You want to know why I'm so adamant about stopping Zionism? This thing is the beast. This is the fourth beast that Daniel saw in the end times. We're going to talk about the last days, the end times, the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. This is the beast, Zionism.
Yes.
And it rules with an iron fist. It has teeth of iron. It crushes its enemies. It makes war against the saints.
Yes.
And for a time prevails against the saints until the Ancient of Days comes and crushes it and gives the kingdom to the saints. Because, this gets even worse. After Stern's death in 1942, the new leadership of Lehi began to move it towards support of Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union. So Hitler's defeated, so what did the Jewish Zionists do? Let's line up with Stalin.
The communists. The people we fought a Cold War against.
And remember us going through the airport there in
Tel Aviv?
The hammer and sickle.
They have this big, beautiful mural going through one of the grand hallways there in the Tel Aviv airport. You know, nice airport and everything, but this big, beautiful mural, and incorporated right into the mural, communist flag.
Yes.
Well, they still have kibbutzes to this day. What is a kibbutz? It's a communist work camp.
It's a communist farm.
Yes.
In 1944, Lehi officially declared its support for Bolshevism and said Bolshevism involved, listen to this, an amalgamation of left-wing and right-wing political elements. What do we have in America right now?
An amalgamation of right-wing.
Jews are controlling the right wing and the left wing. It's the same tactics. Folks, wake up and realize what's being done to you in this country. They're using the same tactics on us. Speak out against them and watch the terrorists come at you. They come at you. They're terrorists. They want to terrorize you. They tried to terrorize me in the past month to force me to be quiet. Well, it didn't work. And I'm telling the truth about who these people are. They are thugs, and they're terrorizing the Arabs for the past 70 years. They plan to terrorize all of us worldwide. Lehi and Ergen were responsible for the massacre at Deir Yassin. Deir Yassin was a Palestinian village, about 600 people near Jerusalem. And on April 9, 1948, Ergen and the Stern Group Lehi raided the Palestinian village and slaughtered 107 Palestinians, including children. That's what they're proud of.
They threw grenades into houses without even looking who was in it.
They're proud of that. See, they've been committing war crimes against humanity since
their inception.
Since the 1930s and 40s. And now they're trying to be legit. It's like the mafia going into a legit business.
Right.
Well, it's a lot like ISIS going into the business of oil refinement, right? I mean, it's just, the examples to modern day are just striking.
Okay, folks, you can read all this yourself at Wikipedia. Just look up Lehi, L-E-H-I. You can spend the next half hour yourself reading this stuff. Doc, Edward, Abraham Stern had 18 principles for the Zionist movement of why he was killing Arabs and Brits. I'm not going to go through all 18. Number one, the nation. He wanted the land back.
Right.
The homeland. He said that they would take everything from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates.
That's their plan.
That's greater Israel. That's in the plan. All of the land from the river of Egypt to the great Euphrates.
God, you're going to give us that land. You owe us that land.
You know, he didn't look to God.
No, I know that. But he said, this is the contract.
Yes.
The only place where the contract like that is listed is in the Bible.
Yes.
And so once again, it's that act of rebellion. We're going to get
back what God took from us.
Right.
Because God took that. The Bible clearly says that God gave all of the land that he promised. He gave it to the Jews.
Right.
All right. But later, he took it from them. He kicked them out. Why? Because of idolatry, rebellion, all of the sins that they were committing. They violated the covenant and they were kicked out. And there is nowhere in the Bible that God ever gave it back to them. And there's nowhere in the New Testament that God ever promises to restore that land.
That's right.
Before Jesus Christ comes back. It's all made up by evangelical Zionists.
But that's not going to stop the people from fighting for it in rebellion against God.
That's right. So he's got the nation, the homeland, the land. These are all parts of the goals. Redemption of the land, establishment of sovereignty, revival of the nation, education. The sword and the book came bound together from heaven. That's what he taught. The sword and the book. That comes from the Talmud. The sword and the book came bound together from heaven. Unity. Alliances, pacts. Force, military force. War. Listen to this. Stern said there must be constant war against those who stand in the way of us fulfilling our goals.
Endless wars.
Perpetual war. Why is the Middle East in constant war? Because the terrorists, the Israeli Zionist terrorists, are carrying out the Stern gang's goals. Perpetual war against anybody who stands against them. It's Zionist jihad.
Yes.
That's what it is. It's Zionist jihad. Make jihad against the opponents of Zionism. It goes on, conquest. The conquest of the homeland from foreign rule, eternal possession, sovereignty, rule of justice, reviving the wilderness, this is for mass immigration. Build the ruins, revive the wilderness for mass immigration. Aliens, solve the problem of alien population by exchange of population. Well, who are the aliens? Palestinians.
Right. And exchange of population, making them move away.
Yes.
Deporting them by force.
Ingathering of exiles. Power. The Zionist nation shall become a first-rate military, political, cultural, and economic entity in the Middle East. Revival, the revival of the Hebrew language. So nobody knew how to speak Hebrew, so they made up a fake Hebrew. Folks, I'm not kidding you. The Hebrew that they're speaking is fake. They made it up. They might as well be speaking Klingon. It's as real as Klingon.
Right.
There was a Hebrew language, but they stopped speaking it
hundreds of years ago.
More than hundreds, a long time ago. Doc,
research says it ended about 600 AD. The last real language of Hebrew spoken. Everything else after that is made up.
In Jesus' day, they were speaking Aramaic.
That's right. Yeah, everybody's got this idea that everybody was speaking Hebrew there.
No, Jesus spoke Aramaic.
That's right.
That was the language spoken in Israel, in Palestine, in Jerusalem. So he wanted to revive the Hebrew language. So that's why the Zionists made up their Klingon Hebrew.
And now it's their state language.
The relationship with fascism and socialism. Big part of Zionism. Folks, Zionism is a fascist/socialist/communist system. They wanted a totalitarian government and asked the Palestinians if they got one. They do have one. That's what they're bringing to you. Look at the suppression of free speech in America.
Just in the past 4 weeks.
The executive order by the White House.
Oh, there is so much here. I mean, I could go into the alliance with the Nazis. Can you believe that these Zionist Jews worked hand in hand with the Nazis? They don't want you to know it. This is the big secret. They don't want anybody to know it. They start screaming the moment you talk about it, that you're promoting tropes against the Jews. No, this is history.
It's a fact.
They want to threaten you, intimidate you not to tell the world that they worked hand in hand with Adolf Hitler and the Nazis and Mussolini and Joseph Stalin.
They even at one point planned an operation to bomb London. Well, they don't know about these are factual operations by these Zionist terrorists.
And the first time I knew about that, I read that in the London Telegraph.
Oh.
It was one of those, today in history. And I'm like, what? They were going to bomb London?
Yeah, people don't remember that back in the 20s and 30s that the terrorist operations that were taking place on London Bridge and Big Ben and everything that was happening back then weren't Muslims that were protesting. It was Jewish terrorists. Jewish terrorists.
That's right. They were the terrorists. They still are the terrorists. Now, the Stern gang, which Lehi, but Stern, because it was founded by Abraham Stern, one member of the terrorist group, he has a son who is a prominent person in America.
Really?
The descendant of a Lehi Stern group terrorist.
Founding father of that group.
Founding member of the terrorist group. Who is the famous American figure, alive today, very active today, who is a son of a Lehi Stern group terrorist? Who would that be?
Well, it's the former Chicago mayor, Rahm Emanuel.
Rahm Emanuel, chief of staff to Barack Obama. Barack Obama wasn't a Muslim. That was the biggest cover story. We all fell for it. I did too. We all fell for it. Barack Obama wasn't they wanted us to, as I said it before, he told people he was a Christian. He acted like a Muslim, but he governed like a Jew.
Right. And he, in fact, called himself basically.
And after he left, he said, I'm
a liberal Jew.
I'm a liberal Jew. And so Rahm Emanuel, his chief of staff, who later became the mayor of Chicago, the capital city of communism in America.
Yes. Right.
If you want to know where communism was birthed and where it has its stronghold in America, it's the city of Chicago. And Rahm Emanuel, his father, was a Stern gang, Lehi, bloody terrorist.
In fact, Rahm himself was named after Rahman, a fellow Lehi combatant who had been killed in a terrorist attack.
Yes.
So Rahm Emanuel himself was named after a terrorist. Not only was the son of a terrorist, he was named after a terrorist as well.
Oh, by the way, one of the goals I forgot to mention of the Lehi group, the building of a third temple.
Oh my goodness. So this manifesto has everything.
All you goofy, gullible evangelical Zionists out there getting all giddy and excited about a third temple, you're just fulfilling the plans of a terrorist group.
It's like you're studying the work of Osama bin Laden. You're following his goal points here.
That's precisely what it is. These people were no different. If you believe there was an Al-Qaeda.
Right, yeah.
That was a CIA group. CIA. Al-Qaeda was a CIA organization. ISIS is an Israeli Mossad operation. I don't think there are any Muslims in ISIS. I think it's just Stern gang dressed up as Muslims, butchering Christians to make people hate the Muslims.
Crucifying them in Syria.
Yes. So let's go on. We've got some more. What do we have here on? Rahm Emanuel's terrorist father. For some reason, Wikipedia deleted his Wikipedia page.
Yes.
I didn't think you could do that.
If you've got the right
smear me.
If you've got the right connections. In fact, it was one of the tools that the White House used under the Obama administration. They had some very active people on Wikipedia that were editing items for various political figures. But yes, we had to pull this up from another site in order to find the listing, because it doesn't exist on Wikipedia.
And what does it say, Doc?
It basically says that it talks about how this article is being considered for deletion in accordance with Wikipedia's deletion policy. And
it details what we already said about Rahm Emanuel's father's ties to terrorism, actually so much so that he left medical school in Switzerland to actually begin smuggling guns from Czechoslovakia for the Israeli underground back to Palestine. The interesting thing about that little note, Rick, is that Robert Maxwell was also involved in an operation for smuggling Czechoslovakian guns to the Israelis. I wonder if they knew each other. Another part of this that's interesting is it details again the core component of his entire family's involvement with the Lehigh Underground and Irgun, because at the top here, the beginning of this deleted Wikipedia posting, it says former member of Erdogan, meaning he was there before the split. Rick, they wanted this gone, so it wasn't brought up during the electioneering, the debates. How would it look that Barack Obama's chief advisor, because a lot of people say the Rahm Emanuel
son of a bloody terrorist.
Yeah, it would look horrible. Absolutely horrible. After 7 years of being at war in Afghanistan, I think it was 2008 when Barack Obama was running.
Go ahead, Doc.
Well, in order for us to get additional information on Rahm Emanuel's father, Benjamin Emanuel, we had to go to other sources, of course, and one of those was a Salem news story, of all things.
It's not the same as Salem, though.
Okay, so it's a different Salem. All right. But this is from 2011, and it says right at the top, Wikipedia deleted the page about Rahm Emanuel's father in 2008. Why do you suppose that happened? And it goes on to talk about an article that Wayne Madsen had published here that goes into details on some of the specific things about Rahm Emanuel's father, specifically that I guess his specialty was bombing buses in Palestine.
Bombing buses.
That was his
Killing
specialty.
children.
Who's the guy on the right?
That is his father. Middle is the brother of the father, the one that died as a combatant. The left is Rahm Emanuel.
So Rahm Emanuel's father is on the right, and he's dressed like a Nazi. I swear that's a Nazi uniform. If I had to guess, where'd you pick up that uniform? I'd say the Nazis. Folks, are you starting to understand why I'm warning you about Zionism? It's what you see on the surface is only what they want you to see. You got to dig down below. You can find Nazism, fascism, communism, socialism, and a lot of bloodshed.
There's a reason why they criminalize even the comparison of what Israel is doing or has done with the Nazis.
Well, part of this new,
anti-Semitism purge.
If you compare Zionism with Nazism, that's anti-Semitic.
And that's in the State Department rules as well.
Yes, but he looked like a Nazi to me. We have this is number 14. This is from Haaretz newspaper, Tel Aviv. Some of the best stuff I get about the Zionists comes from the Jewish newspapers. They just educate me. And then I get in trouble for reading the Jewish newspapers.
So let's read it today, right?
That's it. Okay. That's Haaretz newspaper, their headline, When Jews Praised Mussolini and Supported Nazis, Meet Israel's First Fascists. That's their headline. That was just published a few months ago. Just a few months ago. Because I read all these articles.
But keep that up there for just a moment. For our audience out there, have you ever heard, before today, have you ever heard that the Jews were in alliance with Mussolini and supported the Nazis? Have you ever heard it before today?
I would say most of the people watching say no. But it's known to the Jews.
They did the research on it for us. They did all the legwork already.
Absolutely.
They made all the connections.
But I'm going to be called anti-Semitic and a racist and a bigot because I read the Jewish headlines. I read Wikipedia that says that Rahm Emanuel's father was a terrorist.
Yes.
So Jews praised Mussolini, fascist, and supported Nazis, socialists, and then goes right into it. I mean, they do it themselves. Meet Israel's first fascists. They're calling Israelis fascists. If we call Israelis fascists, we're in trouble.
Yes.
But Haaretz can do it.
Yes, because the country was founded by fascists who were establishing a totalitarian government. Okay, Irgun, one of the worst, bloodiest terrorist groups. You know what it became after 1948?
Get ready.
Irgun is one of the most violent terrorist groups in Palestine. After 1948, Irgun became the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. Those same soldiers that you saw in Hebron sticking those guns in the faces of that mom and those children, that's Irgun.
The same snipers you saw shooting those children by the wall and then laughing about it.
Jewish terrorists, Jewish fascists,
yes,
Jewish thugs with guns. That's the history of the state of Israel. Moses didn't come down and establish it. God didn't establish the state of Israel in 1948. That thing is not from God. And Christians in America, you've been lied to, you've been deceived, you've been fooled, you've been hoodwinked. And I'm doing my best to wake you up and tell you the truth about this thing that rose up in Palestine in 1948. This is not a good thing. This has the potential of becoming the beast that Daniel saw. It rules the world and makes war against the saints. Do we have the last video of the old newsreel?
Yes, we do.
All right, so this, the old,
government British
people
news.
would watch the news at the movie theaters, okay?
Right.
So listen to what the news anchorman says in this old newsreel. He's talking about terrorists in Palestine, in Jerusalem.
So this after World War
Not talking about Arabs, not talking about Muslims,
right?
Talking about Jews.
Jewish terrorists, number 6 for control.
Yeah, so this is after World War II. So people are still, reeling from World War II. Troops have come home. They've had victory over Europe, had victory over Japan. And so they're coming to the movies, they're coming to the theater for the escape, but this is a great way to get news. And this is what they were seeing for their nightly news back in July 1946, a year after the war ended.
That's right. Here it is.
After a bomb explosion caused by terrorists on the British headquarters at Jerusalem, one entire corner of the King David Hotel, a building of 7 stories, was razed to the ground. The stone floors were cut clean away as if they'd been hit by a 1,000-pound bomb from above. Housed in the destroyed wing were the greater part of the government offices where work was in full swing at the time of the outrage. Men of the army and the police were working with cranes, bulldozers, drills and shovels to reach the unfortunate victims still buried in the wreckage. The latest casualty list included 65 killed, 47 injured and 58 missing, though it is doubtful if any of those missing are still alive. Once more, the civilized world has received a rude shock at the hands of fanatics whose wanton act is contrary to the dictates of all creeds alike and imperils the best interests of the cause that it strives to promote.
Following the bomb outrage on the King David Hotel, Jerusalem comes under the most rigorous curfew in the history of the Palestine troubles. On the stroke of 6 each evening, all streets are cleared by British military forces and police. Barbed wire barriers are in place at 0 hour as the troops prepare for another night of vigilance in Jerusalem under curfew.
There you go. That's the true story of the founding of the modern state of Israel. It's just a Zionist totalitarian, bloody, ruthless regime. It's a regime.
The British called them fanatics.
Fanatics. They blew up the King David Hotel. Many innocent people died. That terrorist operation was carried out by Menachem Begin, who later became the prime minister. So again, this would be, if you believe that Al-Qaeda is a real outfit. So imagine, 70 years from now, it wouldn't be 70. Let's just say, if Osama bin Laden was still alive, let's just say 30 years later, Osama bin Laden was the prime minister of the state of Al-Qaeda. And evangelical Zionists, evangelical Al-Qaedas, all right, in America, were defending them.
Got to write that one down.
All right, that's what you have going on today.
It's a perfect example because Mike Evans, the founder of Friends of Zion Museum, he said that he got his start in Israel, founding this museum, his efforts to promote Zionism from his friendship with Menachem Begin.
Mike Evans is a religious terrorist. He's a religious terrorist. He's terrorizing the Holy Church of God with lies.
The minds of the saints.
Yes. He's carrying out propaganda tactics for a terrorist regime.
Psychological warfare.
So I have...
and they're about to take it global.
Yes.
Yes. He's about to take it global.
Yes, he is.
The operation he's building.
All right, there's your history lesson for today. I'll give you something to think about. You can look all of this up yourself. You'll find everything that we said is true. And all the evangelical Zionists out there that are screaming and calling me names and smearing me and attacking me and trying to shut me down, you can't disprove anything I say. All you can do is call me names.
They're scoffers.
But they can't prove that anything that I said is not true.
That's why I want to take away your very ability to say it.
That's what they're trying to do. They want to shut me down because I'm speaking truth. And so the typical terrorist attack is smear the person who's telling the truth.
So ask yourself, who's the terrorist right now in social media? Who's the terrorist online? Who's the terrorist in mass media right now? Who are the terrorists out there?
Who's shutting down people? Who's forcing companies to stop doing business with others? Who's causing people to be deplatformed? Who's doing this? Who's causing people to lose their jobs? Jewish thought terrorists. That's what they are. They're Jewish thought terrorists. And they have accomplices in the evangelical churches. But I have.
And we get letters and emails from Jewish people out there that say Rick is absolutely right.
I know it, Doc. They do.
But they can't speak up either for the very same reason all the evangelical Zionists don't say anything, for fear of the Jews, because they know the truth.
That's right.
We get letters, we get emails constantly from Jewish people out there. They don't believe the same way we do when it comes to Jesus Christ, but they're saying Rick is right on the money on all this.
That's right.
Because they've lived it.
Yes. Yes, that's true, Doc. Absolutely true. Look, this thing is not going to be easy to oppose. If it is the fourth beast, then
it'll make war.
Prophetically, it will make war against the church. If it's not the fourth beast, then this thing can be opposed. It can be stopped.
Defeated.
It can be defeated, just like Nazism, communism, socialism, fascism, whatever ism pops up, it can be put down. But if it's the fourth beast, if this is the thing that the Bible foretells will eventually take over the world, control the finance of the world, because this thing that comes someday controls the financial system of the world.
Right.
So I don't know of any other group that could have that much power over the financial system of the world. So if it is the fourth beast, then we're just getting a taste of what it's going to be like to live under the global tyranny of a Zionist totalitarian regime. Because they're going to have artificial intelligence, surveillance technology, cameras, sensors, total spy system worldwide. That's what they're building. Where is the center? The two areas that are at the forefront of this technology is Silicon Valley and Tel Aviv.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's where the Israeli military and their private sector technology industry.
They're merging.
Yes.
Yes.
The articles we see every day of new companies either moving their headquarters or setting up new offices in Tel Aviv or developing new technologies. We get this information every single day. And there is something definite going on when it comes to collection of data, artificial intelligence. The future of technology is being focused right there in Tel Aviv.
Look, I know I'm catching a lot of harsh criticism for my stand, but as a Christian, I sincerely believe that Zionism is the fourth beast foretold by Daniel the prophet. I believe this is the thing that we're going to face as the Church of Jesus Christ, and we're going to have to confront it. We're going to have to deal with it. We're going to have to stand, and those who endure to the end shall be saved. So that's my right as a Christian. I am not going to censor the Bible. I'm not going to edit the Bible. I'm not going to be afraid to read aloud certain passages from the New Testament. I'm not going to be intimidated by anybody. And I'm doing my best to encourage the body of Christ that's watching us to not fear them, to be bold, to be courageous. Stand up for Jesus Christ. He hung on a cross for you. Then you stand up for him. If we die, we die. If we go to prison, we go to prison. But we don't bow down and surrender. We stand like godly Christian men and women, and we proclaim the truth. And we don't bring in false doctrines into the church. We tell the truth as it is written in the Word of God. That's my position. People can call me any name that they want to call me, but I'm not going to stop. And I'm asking you to stand behind me. We're in the last days of 2019. We need a boost. Thank God our bills are paid here at this ministry. We're not in debt. Right? We could use extra funds, always use extra funds. But we manage this ministry very wisely, and we're not in debt. We keep our bills paid on time. There's not one bill collector calling us at any time saying, you guys are behind. No, we pay our bills, quite frankly, we pay them very fast.
Yes.
Usually within days after the invoices come in. But we manage this ministry very prudently. But we need extra funds. Why do I need extra funds? Because I could do more. That's all. I can do more. The more that we have to work with, the more that we can accomplish, the farther we can take a message. That's why we're asking for more partners. So please get behind us. Send a check or money order to Post Office Box 690069, Vero Beach, Florida. Now you can send precious metals also. People send us gold and silver coins and bars. We will put it to good use. Now you can also give cryptocurrency. Go to our website. There's a box up at the top that says donate. There's a drop-down box. Open up cryptocurrencies. It tells you how to give cryptocurrencies. You can go online. As I just said, click donate. You can give with your bank card, your credit card. You can use PayPal. You can call the phone number on the screen, 800-576-2116. There's a lot of ways to give. But do something. There's 11 days left in 2019. Doc, Edward, and I, we've been faithful. We've been faithful. Everybody in the studio, everybody in this building, we've been faithful in 2019. We've worked long, hard hours. Days that we're so tired. Just tired, Doc. Physically tired, okay? And we keep working. We keep working. We keep working. We've done our part. Would you do your part? Maybe you haven't given anything all year. Finish out this year and say, guys, thank you. Thank you for what you did. I'm with you. Here's a gift. Would you do that for us? You'll make my day. I want to come in here Monday and see that there's been a great outpouring of financial support over the weekend. And you know what? We'll be here Monday because we're faithful.
Amen.
God bless. We'll be back here on Monday.
God bless you.